with all of this stuff is A.J. Brown. Now, when we came in here on Friday, you guys know that I went, I don't know, is it fair to say scorched earth?
Yes.
I think I'm pretty reasonable most days. I feel that I was unreasonable on Friday.
You said there is no way that this could turn out to be a good move by John Robinson, which I did not agree with.
Well, I still kind of feel that way. I still feel that trading AJ is bad business, but I now have new information at my disposal. So, when we did the show Friday, I read Teron Davenport's article. Teron had talked to A.J. Brown. A.J., who, it should be noted, and this is fair criticism of us, by the way, because we should have considered the fact that a 24-year-old kid that can't keep a tweet posted up on Twitter without deleting it for more than 30 seconds may not know all of the intricate details of his contract negotiations. That's bad business on our part. But AJ told Teron that the Titans had made him an offer, $16 million, incentives up to 20, and that AJ would have come back for 22 a year. I saw that, and I had reached out and said, hey, is this accurate? Because I'm about to do 3 hours of radio, and how somebody responds to this is very much going to dictate how Friday's show goes. And the company line perpetually is, we don't discuss contract details publicly. Okay, fine. So I used the information that was at my disposal. Everybody was. And then, by the time I got to the facility on Friday, say about 6 o'clock, I was armed with a very, very different set of information that made this situation make a whole hell of a lot more sense. Here's why. What we had discovered over the course of the last couple of days is that AJ never intended to come back here unless they broke the bank. An offer north of what he got from Philadelphia. Almost $30 million more in guaranteed money than what he got from the Eagles. Almost $10 million more than he wanted or that he had been offered on an average annual basis. AJ's negotiation process got so convoluted by the people that were charged with representing him. And listen, AJ's not blameless here, because in Teron's article, AJ said it wasn't my fault. And you can't do that. Now, this will be a learning process for him, I imagine. AJ will learn at some point in his life that deleting tweets doesn't mean that they don't exist anymore, that the words just evaporate. No, we have screenshots forever. Welcome to the internet. And at some point, your words are going to have consequences. The contract details that AJ gave Teron were inaccurate. And what AJ's representation wanted was well north of the $25 million a year, nearly $80 million guaranteed. Lucas, look up for me what Harold Landry got in guaranteed money this year if you could, because I believe it's just a bit north of 52.
It was an $87.5 million contract.
I believe it was $52 million guaranteed, but I would ask you to fact check me on that just for the purposes of numerical accuracy here, because if we can't do math on air, we can sure as hell read the numbers right. But you're talking about a player in Harold who they paid, who they gave the bag for, who met the market value at a premium position, much like the wide receiver market is currently doing. They gave him the money that he earned because Harold, one, is a soldier for the cause and hasn't missed a game in 3 years and also produces at a high level. $52 million?
$35 million guaranteed at signing.
At signing, but what was the total guarantee? Because I believe the total guarantee is north of 50. Because producer Reed made that error yesterday. $80 million guaranteed.
$52.5.
$52.5 million guaranteed. So nearly $30 million more than what they gave Harold. He had stopped talking to them in the weeks leading up to voluntary offseason program beginning. And at that time, his representation had reached out and had told the Titans he doesn't touch the grass unless he has a new contract. They took that as a sign that they needed to be negotiating, which is why when Diana Rossini came on the radio show about the same time, she said that she believed that AJ would get the contract done first of all of the rookie contract wide receivers because you know what? At least they were talking. Then, when the Titans made their counter, they didn't hear from AJ's side of things for quite some time. And that's when the representation for A.J. Brown hit up the Titans and said $80 million guaranteed and substantially north. My understanding was $29 million average annual salary, which is absurd. Absurd. He's not Devontae Adams. He's not Tyreek Hill. Hell, he's not even going to be remembered as a Titans wide receiver because he was only here for 3 years and only played a full season one of those 3 years. This is not to diminish AJ. I'm not sitting here calling him a liar. Please do not twist my words. But the context of that, requesting a trade and then saying, trade me or this with completely unreasonable and untenable demands makes for a totally different version of the conversation than what we were having on Friday. $16 million a year said to me the Titans didn't want to keep him. Hearing that he requested a trade or $80 million guaranteed, that makes me feel a whole hell of a lot differently about the circumstance.
So I think Titans fans hear that and they think, okay, but that's not what he got in Philadelphia. So why is it okay to take that number in Philadelphia and not in Nashville? But what you're saying is that was on AJ's side of things as far as representation, that they weren't willing to meet that number in Nashville, or the Titans not necessarily willing to meet that number.
20 was not the final stop for the Titans, but there is a substantial gulf between 29 and 20. 25 is that point. 25 is still high for AJ. What he told Tehran is that he would have played for 22. My understanding is he did not express that to the Titans.
That they didn't even get the opportunity to reach that point in negotiations.
They haven't talked to AJ for the better part of 3 weeks. And why Mike Vrabel and John Robinson looked the way that they did after they went into Thursday never intending to trade him. When John says that materialized in 18 to 20 hours, that's because they didn't want to be held hostage and said, okay, we got to do this because this will drag out for months. It still hurts. You can still think it's a bad decision to trade him. I still think it's a bad decision to trade him because, they still had a year of team control. Whether it drags out into ways that are distracting during training camp, whatever, figure it out. I still think AJ's a talented player, but $80 million guaranteed or trade me? Buddy, piss off.
My question is, how can things sour so much to that point of $80 million guaranteed or trade me? If you told us that was the conversation a month ago, nobody would have believed that with the perceived relationship between A.J. Brown and the Tennessee Titans.
That's a question for his agent. We may never have the answer to that.
That comes as a shock to people, I think.
That he requested a trade and then said $80 million guaranteed or trade me.
And not even the opportunity, it sounds like, to meet that number of 25 a year, $57 million guaranteed, which is what he got in Philadelphia.
I don't have the timeline for where the Deebo Samuel's mom's leaked Instagram, or I guess it's not leaked, it's public, but where Deebo Samuel's mom's Instagram live video factors into this, where Deebo and AJ are talking about the contract details of the 49ers and the Titans publicly, saying that they will not exceed $20 million for either of those players. I don't know where that factors in. I don't know if that is something that the agent discussed with them, told to them, and said, this is not a good deal for you. I don't know if the agent is trying to make good on deals that he did not necessarily, or that the team of agents, it's not just one individual at CA, it's a team. Mike Williams, I think, what did Mike Williams sign for? Is 3 years, what, 60 mil?
I believe so. I'll double check that.
Mike Williams.
But it was about 20 a year, yeah.
Mike Williams probably could have gotten more, right? Mike Williams also represented by CAA. I don't know if there was a kind of make good thing in the middle of all of this because of the way that contracts had gone. This is part of this, what I'm talking about now. What I have given you are reported details. What I'm now talking to you about is speculation because I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know I can't tell you what's in AJ's head. All I know is we've talked about this. You're dealing with a hugely emotional 24-year-old Gen Z athlete who, by the way, has just spent a full year with Julio Jones, who famously likes to renegotiate contracts with multiple years left on his deal, so much so to where he completely ruined the relationship between him and Arthur Blank as one of the historically best players in the history of the franchise. They had to ship him off. There's a lot of this that only AJ can answer, and I don't know that AJ knows all the details. Because I watched a video from Logan Ryan this weekend where Titans fans remember Logan Ryan. He did a weekly show on this station for a period of time. You know what Logan Ryan to be a well thought out, very meticulous individual.
Was big in the community.
Irrelevant, but yes. Logan Ryan put out a video on one of these I Am Athlete podcasts or something like that where he's talking about, I have my agent through all three of my contracts walk me through how he does these things. I have my agent do that so I can learn and I can talk to my agent in detail and with confidence, with trust about the deals that he is negotiating on my behalf. Logan Ryan represents a much smaller percentage of the NFL population for the rest of the players who say, I've got an agent who handles those things. Get me the deal done. Here's X, Y, and Z what I want. Make it happen or else. AJ at 24 is probably not, just based on what I know of AJ, probably not as buttoned up on the details of his contract as somebody like Logan Ryan at a much more advanced age with much more wisdom in his NFL career. This changes the conversation around A.J. Brown entirely. Again, they're not a better team for having traded him. But the reason why he's here, buddy, don't tell me it wasn't my fault. 615-737-1045. Jake is in Boston. Hello, Jake.